Vision, mission, and values and company culture all come into play when we talk about brand messaging. Because again, this comes down to the truth. What's the truth about your brand? And the truth is every experience that someone has with your brand. Patient experience probably makes up 80% of a brand. And so this is an area where it's absolutely essential to invest the time and the money. It's absolutely essential that everyone who's interacting with a patient understands what the values of the organization are and what the expectation is around that patient experience. What is the experience that your team is having? Because the more you're creating a smooth visual experience, the more time you're giving back to your internal team, and the higher the quality of service they're going to be giving to your patients.
That's really helpful. So just to recap that, this is the client or patient journey, depending on who your customers are. This is what you call the journey. And so you talked about initial awareness, with the advertising that first catches the eye, and that needs to have some emotional trigger to it. It could be humorous, it could be validating a pain point, but something that draws that person in and I guess it's a real connection to them, right? It connects with something that they're feeling, and so that's the awareness. And then assuming that awareness triggers the person to want to do a deeper dive, then now you go to the education process, education before decision, education. And that's where you talked about YouTube as being a great one, downloadable articles, blog posts, that sort of thing. And then to the point in the journey where the person is actually making a decision. That would be the journey in three stages overall. Yes,
it's awareness, consideration, decision. And of course, that can be labeled different ways. Everybody has their own, steps and stages.
Right.
But those are the basics.
Right. Okay. No, that's very, very helpful. Very helpful. So let's talk a little bit about the actual culture of the business, the team, which it's got to start with the person at the top. It's got to start with the owner, the CEO, right? I mean, that's where culture starts. If my point is this, and as a marketer and a company that does marketing for firms, you could do all this great work that you're talking about, branding and setting up all the advertisements and the social media and all that. But if the actual experience, because the culture of the business and the intake, you talked about, the intake, it could be a person on the phone. You talked about that person. If that's not congruent with what's putting out there, then all the work that you would do probably goes for naught. I mean, so my question is, when you're potentially taking on a client, Daisy, how deep a dive do you do with the actual culture of the company to make sure, hey, they've got their stuff together? Maybe they're aspirational about what they want to do, but if they're not there yet, how do you deal with that?
Sure. So vision, mission, and values and company culture all come into play when we talk about brand messaging. Because again, this comes down to the truth. What's the truth about your brand? And the truth is every experience that someone has with your brand. So if there are areas where there's room for improvement, we definitely identify those. And that comes down to, what's the commitment of leadership to improving constantly in the areas where they've identified. And sometimes they know that because they need to do those things because they see a competitor who's doing something much better than they are. And they want to strive to reach that same level. And sometimes it's something they know that everybody in their industry is doing poorly. And they're like, okay, this is an area where it makes sense to invest our energy and our focus to make things better. It's interesting. Often my clients will use the brand message playbook that we develop that has their buyer personas and all their messaging to train their incoming staff. Not just their salespeople, not just their marketing person, but everybody who has an interaction with their customer base or their patient base. I would say that patient experience probably makes up 80% of a brand. And so this is an area where it's absolutely essential to invest the time and the money, looking at what people complain about online about practices like yours, not just about yours, but what are people complaining about in general? Those are areas where you can definitely differentiate and create that advantage. And it's not necessarily about the skill of the provider. In those cases, a lot of complaints are about the front office staff, the experience from setting an appointment to the office itself. And I get it that finding and training and keeping good staff is one of the hardest things about running a practice. I hear this from every healthcare practitioner that I talk to. It's so difficult, but it's absolutely essential that everyone who's interacting with a patient understands what the values of the organization are and what the expectation is around that patient experience. One big piece of this from the outward perception angle is the reputation management. And that's not just about responding to negative reviews. And by the way, I don't advise doctors and dentists to respond to the negative reviews themselves, because that can be very emotional. Have someone who's trained and able to do that for you in a compliant manner, because there, of course, with HIPAA regulations, there are things you can and cannot say in reviews. But it's also important to respond to and appreciate all the positive reviews. So every single review that's left for your business, if there's ability to respond, there should be a response. It's also important to actively cultivate positive reviews and know when is the right time to get those and what method should you use to acquire them. So email, follow-up, you'll get some. For today's generation, texting a request might get a better response. There's also the opportunity when the staff calls to follow up, or when the dentist calls to follow up with the patient, to just make a personal request, because that has an emotional component to it. And there's also the option to capture reviews while the patient is still in the office, if you have a kiosk for that. But again, it's about timing. So if they just had a very painful procedure and they can't feel their face, not the right time. During the follow-up visit, when they're feeling great and they love how their mouth looks, that's the perfect time. If you use a kiosk in your office, it's also very easy to figure out which review sites you want them to leave reviews for you on. So if you've got a whole bunch of stuff on one review site, but you're like, okay, well, we're not showing up as much on a different review site, you can determine where you want those to be placed.
I've heard.
Go ahead.
I said I've heard some companies, and I'm not sure what the system is to do this technically, but where when they are requesting, soliciting reviews, that if they get a review that's less than say a 5-star, that review stays internally and gives the company the opportunity to reach out to that person before that review goes live. Is there ways to sift and sort a little bit? I mean, I don't know that. Okay.
It depends on the review site. With
Okay.
Google 5-star reviews, if you're running that as part of your website, you usually have that capability. If it's an outside review site, you probably won't. In which case, you will need to respond in some way to those, but definitely never miss an opportunity to learn more about how to serve patients better. And sometimes it's about learning how to weed out potentially problematic patients before they become part of your practice. I would definitely recommend look at what cosmetic dentists and what cosmetic surgeons have been doing for the last 10 years, because they were way ahead of the curve. Other practitioners are just now starting to make inroads in doing marketing well. Back 10 years ago, I was working with cosmetic surgeons and dentists and specialists in areas like fertility, where all of their patients are private pay. And so they had to know how to attract those patients. Now, your patient base may be entirely different, but they care about something. So knowing what that is and communicating about that is very essential. I would say also in terms of branding, digital is where a lot of practices are really falling down. And this is not just about not having enough content out there, not having it optimized, but also taking that opportunity for interaction. So I have seen dental websites where no one is responding to blog comments. You have prospective patients who are asking questions about procedures in the comments. Why are they asking questions? Because they want to have some work done. Those are leads that are just going to waste. Whether you choose to publish comments or not, it's a potential lead source. Someone needs to be monitoring that, and it should not be your web development people.
Right.
Because they don't work in healthcare. Someone needs to be responding to YouTube comments. Someone needs to be responding to contact form fills. This one I see also. I've been in a dentist office before where they don't know where the contact forms go. That's our web designer's deal. The people in the front office at reception who should be getting those forms and reaching out to set appointments, no, they're not. How many tens of thousands of dollars are just being flushed away because nobody's responding? And it doesn't just mean you're missing that opportunity, but also the opportunity to make a great impression for that patient's friends and relatives and the people that they would be referring to your practice. There's also an opportunity, speaking of video, again, not just on YouTube, but have a tour done of your office, one of those Google 360 tours. Most of your competitors are not doing that. How open and transparent are you being about the experience that patients are going to have? And then in the patient intake process, forms should be automated, not just digital. So now most practices have forms that you can go online. You can't do it on your mobile because it's like this tiny, you have to keep on like moving it around to get to it. But forms should be auto-populated. If there's a known field, your name, your address, your date of birth, that's not changing from one form to the next. We have the technology to auto-fill those, but most practices are not building that into their patient experience. And as that patient demographic gets younger and younger and younger, their expectations for a smooth digital experience are going to keep increasing. And it's time to fix that problem now and not wait until it becomes a major pain point.
That is so good. And what you're describing, defining here, Daisy, is, and you said a little bit earlier in our discussion, but you're removing friction points. As customers today, with technology, as you said, we expect a more seamless service because we've experienced somewhere else. And if your business, your company, your office is not up to par, then we automatically, as a customer from the outside or a prospective customer, see that as they're not up to par. That kind of turns me off right there. If I have to go through some laborious intake forms, or I have to go 15 minutes early to the office and hand fill out all those forms, which we used to have to do in the old days.
Mm-hmm.
But if you've got something seamless for me, where it's, as you said, data filled, and I can just click a few appropriate boxes for updates, that smooths it out. And I'm just just makes me feel like the whole process, the whole experience is starting out on a good note, versus if I'm busy like everybody today and got stresses, and just put one more thing in front of me that makes me feel a little bit anxious or just a little bit irritated, right? And it sets the tone. It sets a tone. Whereas if it's smooth, I'm going to be more upbeat, and the rest of the process is good. So why not remove some of those barriers on the front end of that experience, and give the patient, the customer, the prospect, the opportunity to have a free flowing experience from the get-go.
Absolutely. And that ties back into what is the experience that your team is having, because the more you're creating a smooth digital experience, the more time you're giving back to your internal team, and the higher the quality of service they're going to be giving to your patients. And the more time they can spend in that emotional rapport and relationship building, getting to know your patients, asking those questions that help you further refine your buyer personas that you're marketing to. There's so much that you can do with that time that you get back if you invest in the right marketing, automation, and patient experience tools.
Super. So Daisy, let's talk a little bit. You specifically in the Marketing Blender, you work with B2B, business to business clients, but obviously you've got you in Marketing Blender you can also help companies that are B2C.
We all serve B2B clients. We do have a CMO now that does work with healthcare organizations.
Okay.
We've got that covered. Straight B2C, no. So business to business, and now business to patient. Sure.
Patients. Okay.
There's B2C, that's where with the Coca-Colas of the world, that's not.
Yeah. Okay. Well, no, that's good. So if somebody's listening today and would like to get a little bit deeper dive into what they could do to ascertain where they are with their brand messaging and brand story, to your point earlier, there's so many lost opportunities and therefore lost revenue that companies that have great intentions and are probably delivering really optimal services, but if your story's not out there, if you're not exhibiting your experience in the customer journey, then they don't know, and so they're missing lots of opportunities. So how would someone best get an assessment with a Marketing Blender to see if there might be a fit or opportunity for them to get some insights into what they could be doing to upgrade their brand messaging?
Sure. So the best way to start is definitely go to the Marketing Blender website and start exploring the downloadable resources that we have. Road to Revenue Toolkit. We have mission and vision workshop stuff. We have tons and tons of awesome blog content. And of course, there are plenty of ways to get in touch for an assessment and a consultation through the website. But definitely take some time to look through and educate yourself on some of the topics. It's going to be very evident to you where your particular stumbling blocks are, and if this is a good fit to have a conversation to help move your business or your practice forward.
Perfect. Well, Daisy McCarty, I appreciate your time so much. This was very, very insightful. In just a short time, you gave a lot of nuggets, and I think a lot of considerations for any business owner to be looking at right out of the gate that could make their their business more profitable, the experience for both their staff and their customers, patients, clients much better as well. I think this is where we are in the world today. It's all about, as you said earlier, it's all about authenticity. You've got to show up and be an authentic company that's delivering a promise that is by design delivered. And you also mentioned, which we didn't have time to go into today that much, but the differentiator regarding the uncomparable advantage. And you also, I'm sure, help clients develop that if they haven't already discovered what that is. It's very, very important to have that differentiator out there as well.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for having me on the show.
Thank you, Daisy. If you enjoyed watching or learning from this video, please leave a like and subscribe to my channel for more content. If you have a question about any of my content or this specific video, just please leave a comment down below. And as always, stay focused on your freedom. I'll see you next time.